Hey, I'm Scott,
And I'm Chris.
and this is Doxologic, where we help you think with your Bible.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Doxologic. I am here today with Pastor Scott. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you?
I am also doing well, and we have yet another guest. We have been on a little bit of a roll
Come
lately,
on.
and we are excited to introduce to you Pastor Max Monaghan.
Ow!
Thank you. And the crowd goes
That
wild.
intro.
Standing at, I have no idea how tall you are. I'd do that too.
6'3". Let the record show.
Let the record show. Pastor Max,
Hey.
how's that sound, bro?
It sounds really good.
Yeah, man.
it sounds great.
It has been a good road and a
Yes.
long road for you to get to this place where you are our first local church plant in the Folsom area. And I would
Coming
just...
in 2023
Thank you.
in the spring.
That's right. Spring of 2023, a whole lot of work been going on already. It turns out you don't just decide to do it and it just appears. You really have to work a lot at it. So maybe it would be good to let the fine listeners of Doxologic get a little personal intro, some background for those that don't know some of your history, and then we'll go from there, man.
Yeah, it's good. Well, Max Monaghan, that's who I am. I was raised in the church. I would say I was at church, 2-3 times a week, every single week. My mom worked at the church. But somehow throughout all of that, I had no understanding of sin. That personal relationship with Jesus was missing. Made it all the way through high school with that being the case, and then kind of went left after high school. Was one of those wayward kids, if you will. Pursued a career in rap music, was making hip-hop music. That's kind of where I found my solace. That was my idol, my lowercase g God. Put everything I had into that for the better part of a decade. And from that place, the Lord did a real work in my heart. I was into just about everything you could imagine from that lifestyle, and found myself, I don't know how many times I've told this story, but edge of my bed, having a full-blown panic attack, I would say a spiritual attack. Found myself just recounting all the details of my life, trying to figure out, how do I get out of this place? And all I could come up with is just that I'm not living right. And had this Psalm 91 tattoo.
I love this story.
Yeah, it's crazy. It actually says Psalms 91, which just shows that I was not living right when I got it.
It's like Revelations.
Yes.
Yeah,
5.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And I looked down in that moment and I saw that, and I just thought, it couldn't hurt. And so I pulled out my dad's Bible and started flipping, found Psalm 91. And about the third time through, it was really starting to click, and I was just sobbing, calling out to Jesus, you gotta come into this picture. I can't do this myself. It wasn't long after that. Well, it was a little while after that, but I found myself in, I didn't get plugged in. I didn't find accountability.
How old were you at this time, if I can
Yeah,
ask?
I was, I want to say 25,
Okay.
25 years old. And I started reading the Word. I looked up online, where do you start? They say the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts. And I did that. That was all great. And then I got to Romans, and Paul writes in such a way that I got totally confused. And right around that time, I started getting scheduled on Sundays. I had 0 Christian friends, and one thing led to another, and I was back in that old lifestyle. And from that place, the Lord, I think he kind of turned me over to myself for a period of time, just to show the necessity of accountability, the necessity of community and fellowship, and his word, really. And, I came to another low point, and I had already experienced the transformational work of Jesus Christ. And so I started going back to churches and was shopping churches, and actually got, I reached out to the only Christian I knew. Turned out he wasn't actually a Christian, but he had a cross on his truck.
So you felt it was a good place to start.
Yeah, I mean,
The guy's at least repping a cross on his truck.
Yeah, but he actually, he pointed me in the direction of another buddy I knew, and he said, "Yeah, come on down to our small group." And I was there, and it was all about 5 minutes before I realized this is exactly where I needed to be. And that was
What'd you say going in, though? That was kind of funny.
Yeah, I said, I said, Lord, let there not be a lot of people and let me not know anybody.
From high school, right?
Yeah. And I walked in and it was a packed house, like seating room, sitting on the floor only was left over. And your brother, Kyle, who I went to high school with, pops out and he's like, oh, what's up, dude? And I'm like, really, God? 2 for 2. But yeah, like I said, about 5 minutes and I knew this is a place where I needed to be. And I said, I got to tune into this church because that's what they were talking about was the sermon from that previous Sunday. And that ended up being a Doxa, a Harvest Bible Chapel church at that time, but it was Doxa. And and I said, man, where do you guys meet? And they said, Granite Bay High School. And I said, you've got to be kidding me.
Because you also went there.
Yes. Yeah. And I also said I would never go back there.
And sound familiar, Scott?
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar.
Every church planter's story at some point.
So you ended up in that peach-colored cafeteria for a while with us, and and then I know I'm beelining to a moment that I know about. 1 Samuel. You can probably remember the chapter, but we were going through 1 Samuel as a church, and that moment to I know a lot of growth had been taking place, but that you felt this clear and just burning calling toward ministry, but I think toward church planting. Am I right? So explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had heard, I was on fire, and I just was telling anybody that would listen. If somebody said, oh my God, I was like, that's an opportunity.
This is a gospel moment here.
I was that annoying new life, and it's
awesome.
So great. And I had heard from a couple of people, first non-believers, you should be a pastor. And I thought, you don't know what I've done. You don't know who I am. You don't know what it takes to become a pastor. But to be completely honest, I didn't either. And so I'd actually seen Scott at a wedding, and I just asked him, just out of curiosity, what would it take to become a pastor? And he got, about halfway through a sentence before saying, are you talking about for yourself? And I said, yeah, I guess, and he said, I would totally support that. And I thought, okay, well, this isn't a non-believer. This is my pastor. This is the one shepherding my soul. I should really start praying about this. And the next week was that lesson in 1 Samuel. It was 1 Samuel 9 and 10. And I don't even think I made it through the opening worship, to be honest with you. I think I just knew. I think the Spirit was doing the work. But, then the message just reiterated God's providence and how, he had laid all these steps before Saul. He thought he was chasing donkeys. He ended up becoming the king of Israel. And I just, I was just looking at my life and how the Lord had led me here. I mean, of all the churches to wander into, of all the sermons to be sitting in, it was just so clear. And Scott even shared in that message a little bit about his call to ministry and how he had stood up, if I remember correctly, without even knowing what you're doing. You're like, what am I doing?
Yeah. Total out-of-body experience.
Yeah. And I was just bawling. And I came up to him afterwards, and I think I just said, let's do it. And he knew what I meant, Praise God.
Yes. It's
awesome.
Yeah. And I think the church planning side of it was something that kind of came out in the internship. So the pastoral internship.
Right.
So you did that 2020 to 2021.
Yeah, so that message was in 19, I think, that you're talking about for 1 Samuel, and then 2020, because what started to happen was the Lord was starting to do this work in guys' hearts. And there was a select few individuals who didn't know what to do next, but knew God was calling them to something. Yeah. And I had it in the back of my mind, always wanted a 2 Timothy 2:2 kind of ministry, right? Take what's been entrusted to me and entrust to others who will be able to teach
others also.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so I knew the time had come. I need to figure this out. I've got guys that are looking to find a way forward. Yeah. And so we put together this kind of guinea pig pastoral training, 2-year, 4-semester endeavor called the 6-4 Internship now, and you were a part of that first group. And it was created in large part because of guys like you and a few others in our church that had a kind of a similar calling, but in a different context.
Totally. Yep.
So here we are. It is September, early September as we're recording this, and you were officially selected in March.
Yeah, you were
put before the church.
Put before the church
for a few weeks, right?
Yep.
Kind of as we would an elder, so we wanted to do with you as our first ever church planter. That process, thankfully, came and went without much fanfare. Those 3 weeks,
God.
And praise God,
it was great.
And then you were officially installed into this role as our church planting pastor. And so, update us on just what has it been like for you personally? I think before we want to talk about the 4 pillars in your church, and you've got these 4 S's, and we'll get into those details. But like, what's it been like for you on just a personal level, getting into this role?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, wow, that's a really good question.
You don't get that question probably very often. How are you doing personally? You've got a lot of work to do, right?
Yeah,
and so you don't always think about that question.
Yeah,
That's a good
totally.
one.
And and we're just so focused on the next item on the list.
Right.
Sometimes that doesn't come up. But it's been a trial, to be honest. I knew I was called. I knew that I wanted to shepherd a body. I wanted to preach God's word week in and week out, and participate in God's work in the church, for his people. I mean, it's a sweet endeavor, and that's been there for some time. When you talk about church planting, there's something very different than just pastoring a church, right? If I were to take over a church, there'd be different trials, right? I'd be learning their culture. I'd be figuring out how to institute change, and there'd be all kinds of different trials. But when you talk about planting a church, your job description is so much more than shepherding the flock and preaching God's word. You have to learn. I mean, I'm learning recently. I need to know a little bit about real estate, commercial real estate, no less.
Sure.
And I mean, balancing numbers that'll be given to somebody else, but
sure.
But,
I mean, at the beginning, it's all
stuff,
you wear a whole bunch of different hats.
Yes,
right.
Yes, and at the very least, you're making it so that somebody else can do the job, right? Like, I'll get this rolling until we can afford to outsource it, or somebody else surfaces with that particular gifting, and we can give it to them. Delegation, something totally foreign and new to me. I've been learning a lot about, and it's just been stretching. So I say it's been a trial, but it's been a sweet trial. My wife and I have, we felt so close to the Lord in this season, as we've wrestled with these things, as we've had to make tough decisions and, pivot and adapt as we go. It's been really sweet. So I think the Lord has been really faithful. But I also think I might have gotten some gray hairs already in just the past few months.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I believe it. Scott, for you, you've known Max several years now. Thinking about that time, you knew him even before the wedding, but your guys' relationship has obviously really increased through the internship, and that process for you of settling on him as our first church planter as a church, was that difficult? Did it become easy over time? Just bring the people who just don't know what that process was even like into the selection that we made.
Yeah, it's a weird role as a pastor trying to get a sense for not only who the guy is, but the timing that the Lord has for the guy. And neither one of those is ultimately it's God's role, and you're trying to be on page with God at the timing God has for him unveiling and preparing and maturing at the right time. And so it's a little bit complicated, because you don't want to presume upon the Lord and be like, I know your future, you're going to be a church planter, you're going to go now, and all that kind of stuff. And the interesting thing with Max was Max had started seminary at the time we had started to have these conversations, and he had quite a bit of seminary to finish. So in the back of my mind, I kind of have Max on definitely see him with the gifts of a church planter, not just a pastor, not just a preacher, but a guy who is wired and gifted by God to plant a church. But he was sitting on my, shelf in my mind of when he gets closer.
Several years, maybe.
Several years down the road, probably have one guy before him and all of this stuff. And in a series of different conversations that actually culminated in really the end of the internship, and seeing so much growth over that time. And he was also plugging away at seminary. And as the days were going by, it was sweetening your desire and clarifying your desire more and more, so that we ended up having this conversation at the end of the last semester, realizing that this wasn't as far of a jump as I thought it was. And for whatever reason, it just stayed on a shelf. But I think what that conversation did was it allowed his own convictions to become clear, going, hey, man, I think you might have a time frame that isn't my time frame, just so you know. Like, I'm actually quite further ahead in seminary and see a pathway forward for this to continue. And it just hit me like, oh Lord, you're ripening this right now. This is ready to go. And we were ready as a church. We had certainly done the work in the internship, and God started to surface that through your own conviction and our own conversation. We put him before the elders who had known you and were getting to know you more and more. And it just became very clear. And then, of course, when we put you in front of the church, we were looking for anyone that had a biblical concern. And not only did we not get anyone with a biblical concern, people who wrote in to say...
overwhelming,
just like,
positivity.
What a blessing he is, because his heart, you're such a pastor at heart. So for people that don't know you, you are an amazingly gifted shepherd, you know, and you did that with your friends at the beginning, and most of your friends were not Christians. So you were, at the very beginning of your Christian walk, it was evangelism into like some measure of discipleship. But discipleship is the heartbeat of not only your heart, but your life. It's what you've lived. And so to me, those who will be under your care are going to be so well cared for and taken care of, you know? So anyway, I'm encouraged about that.
I can remember a few years back when I was the pastor overseeing small group ministry. You were a small group leader. You're laughing. How many conversations did we end up having? And God bless you, but it's always like, I am pulling into my house. You know, it's like 5:17, and I'm like, Max is calling. And then I'm pacing in my front lawn because I don't want to go inside, and my kids will interrupt. So I'm pacing inside, and Max would be dealing with like a shocking number of things within his own small group, as if God was preparing you. Wink, wink. To take on serious things, and a lot of them at one time. Sometimes it was like, how many small groups are you covering? You know, you got 3. Those are all in one small group. Yes, it's this issue, it's this sin, it's this, and it was never. From my memory, Chris, I need you to come in and take care of this, which is okay when that's needed, right? But it was like, how do I pastor my small group? And we don't expect everyone to do that to an equal level, but that you had that heart was just beautiful to see, and it still wasn't clear where this was headed. But I look back on those moments, and we laugh about the timing and all this, but how many things you walked with people through faithfully to prepare you for this is just... It's sweet. It's awesome. Really sweet. So we are a church planting church. That's something I can remember. I mean, in the last 8 years alone, for me, how many times have I said it? How many times have I heard you say that? But this is our first, at least locally. We've participated in church planting in different ways, but our first church, we're church planting, and yet we're not doing a campus model, and we're not doing... just the put the multi-site, put the pastor on a screen model. So Scott, without every last option necessarily gone through, but what is our heartbeat with why we're proceeding the way that we are?
Ecclesiologically, we've seen kind of an...
Ecclesiologically.
Yes.
Maybe break that down for the good folks.
Yes. Do you want to define it?
Well, it's a long word.
Since you've interrupted me now, why don't you define it?
You used it, you define it.
Buck passed.
We have fun, don't we? No, thank you for stopping me on that. I'm talking about the church. Ecclesiology is the study of the church. So from an ecclesiological perspective, from a church perspective, and you see this ecclesiology, this theology of the church would be obviously coming out of the scriptures. There is a clear pattern of disciple making that needed to take place. Obviously, that taking place in the form of churches being planted, right? Because as Christians were made and they were gathered together, the entity under which or into which they were brought in by the gospel was the church. They were the church, but the church also has organization. It is an organic entity, and it's the body of Christ, but it's also organizationally established with things like elders who institute church discipline and stand upon the preaching of the word, and discipleship is a major goal, and on we could go about what the church is supposed to be and do. So when you think about that, our desire was to have actual preaching pastors in their context with those people and elders shepherding a local body, and seeing that as a priority for us, that multi-site sort of I'm okay with it as people talk about it as a strategy to catalyze something that later you're raising up a guy for. But I think the healthiest model, as I look at it, and what I was going to share earlier, I realize now, was the idea of we've gone through kind of an experiment over the last 25 years or so, where this whole multi-site thing didn't really exist, people on screens and all that stuff. And for the most part, people found it was relatively effective. But now all these years later, the levels of complexity, the levels of difficulty of what that looks like from a shepherding perspective on the ground has caused many of the like-minded churches that are in that place to be able to have something like that, to change their model and send these multi-sites out to being what we're calling autonomous local churches, meaning pastor in place, independent, with elders on their own, doing their own thing. Now, interdependency is something we're big on, okay? So like Philippians 1, I pulled this up, that Paul thanks the church in all of his remembrance of them, always in every prayer of mine for you all, making my prayer with joy. Verse 5, because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. There is this interdependence, call it a doctrine of interdependence, that we are believe in at Doxa, that Max and I want to model as we go forward, that we are in partnership together while being separate churches, but after the same mission, under the same, generally speaking, philosophy of ministry, and think we can get more done by doing it together than we can by merely propping up one teacher on screens as an end in and of itself. Again, I can understand a conversation for a mean situation, but we'd rather have them raised up in house, sent out, and then wherever they are, they're immediately partnering with us, so that in year 2, you can already be what we've been trying to do for a long time, to your point, which is to be a church planting church. And you can jump on our shoulders, and eventually it'll switch back and forth. You'll have a guy raised up, ready to go be sent somewhere, and you're going to be talking to us going, how do we get that done?
Right.
So that interdependence and partnership together.
Yeah. I think it's the most faithful demonstration of 2 Timothy 2:2 as well. You know, are you really, entrusting to faithful men who will be able to teach others also, if you are still over their overseeing their ministry? You know, is that really entrusting, right? We've talked about this in the past with staff, you've talked about this in the past in the internship, but entrusting something to a staff member, even if the result is not what you were hoping it to be, you can entrust them to the Holy Spirit. You can entrust that their work is going to be, fruitful. And even if it's not exactly what you wanted, it's that entrusting piece. And been learning quite a bit about that myself, just in the planting and the delegation. But it does seem like it's the most faithful to the New Testament model.
Awesome. So the name of the church is still forthcoming. Yeah. Right? We're getting there. Mm-hmm. A lot of work. That's been a lot of prayer and a lot of work. But you do know, while that is going to be important to just be able to say what the name is and people know where it is eventually, tell us about the church at this point on the mission statement. Pillars, that's kind of common nomenclature around here at Doxa. Things that are never going to change. That's why they're pillars. And then, share a bit about what this local church is going to be like, feel like, as you've been doing this work.
Absolutely. Would you like me to speak into the name piece at all?
If you like, sure.
Well, I'll just say that, I don't think the name has to be a particular thing, but we see it as a unique opportunity right now to establish our identity, our mission, even in just the name. And it doesn't have to be that way. But if you get Scott talking about Doxa as a name, you'll probably see that passion for the mission come out.
And we'll have to listen for a while.
Yeah.
Because I'll just
go.
Longer than we have today.
And, So we really want to be intentional about the name. I kind of relate it to back when we were looking for a building. Before we found this building, there was, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a building that was on the line off of Hazel, right?
Property.
Yeah. Okay. And it was just about all systems go.
We
were doing prayer nights out on the property, just seeking the Lord and all that stuff. So it was definitely, there was nothing stopping us, in other words, on the other side, except for our own decision. Yeah.
Right. But saying, you know what, let's hold off. We feel like this isn't the absolute wisest decision we can make, and really just trying to not settle. So we feel like the name can be that. we want to take our time with it, and we feel like the Lord has afforded us time. We're still pressing on with all of the other things on our list, but we want it to be just right. After all, this is the Lord's business that we're doing, so we want to do things very cautiously and intentionally.
Yep.
So this church with a name forthcoming, being worked on, prayed through. What's it going to be founded upon? What are things I know in Vision Nights that you've been sharing? I want to make sure folks know about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So our mission statement is the same as Doc says. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Which is, we exist to glorify God by making disciples of Jesus Christ. And we would break that down in 4 pieces. We desire to participate together. We desire to participate, that's a key word, as well as together in God's work of saving, sanctifying, supplying, and sending his people. And we feel that those 4 components summarize what the church really exists to do. We feel like that breaks down the mission of discipleship. We want to participate in God's work of saving people. We want to be the ones that gave them the gospel and see their lives transformed before our eyes. We want to come alongside them in the sanctification process and watch people grow up into the maturity, the mature manhood, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. And we want to be the ones that are supplying them. I think that's a piece that oftentimes churches are missing, is we want to be raising people up. We want to be equipping the saints for the work of ministry. Same passage. And then we want to send them out. It would be just what a waste it would be if all of us got so mature and so wise in the Lord and so equipped, and then we didn't do anything with it. That would be the lamp under a basket. We want to be sending our people out. So that's kind of our breakdown of the mission statement. And should I just get into the 4 pillars?
Yeah, man.
Okay, great. So
you're on a roll.
Yeah, so that's our house, right? And what supports the house is our 4 pillars. So we have also very similar to Doxa, biblical preaching, of course, and we see that play out in every one of these. We see play out in all of our 4 S's: biblical preaching, reverent worship, persistent prayer, and sacrificial service. And I think sacrificial service is another one that often gets left out. It's not just for the benefit of the body, that you serve using your spiritual gifts. It's also for your own benefit. It's a means of grace and sanctification. So, those are the 4 that we're holding this house up with. And,
awesome.
And we want to be just a people so entrenched in these things. We just had our first vision night, and we talked about persistent prayer in particular. And, I have this vision, and I know you have this vision as well, but I don't want to be people that says, I'll pray for you. I want to be people that stops what we're doing right there in the lobby, in the parking lot, at the grocery store, and prays for the person. Yes. I don't even want that to be in our vernacular. Right. I'll pray for you. It's, can I pray for you? And I just so fervently believe in these 4 things. This is what our church is going to be built upon.
So when we think about our kind of discipleship structure at Doxa, you can kind of put some concrete things behind at least predominant avenues to go down. So when we talk about worship, we're definitely talking about minimally the gathering of the saints. We talk about walk, we're talking about at least some level of small group participation. So give me a sense for the S's, like what are the practicals, right? Can you break that down a little bit for us? So if someone's interested, they want to know, what does that look like to be a disciple?
Yeah. Well, small groups are going to be, just like Doxa, that's a huge part of our model. Where do we really see discipleship happen tangibly? The Sunday gathering, and we see it in small groups. And, I've had conversations with Stu and Tom Caldy, who's also a key component in this church plant. And, we'd really like to see our small group curriculum, as incredible as it is, we'd like to see it shift toward gospel communities, that people who are so entrenched in the gospel that they're going out and proclaiming the gospel. And I know that's something that's on Stu's heart, our pastor of small groups and discipleships. And and we have, I'll just leave it there.
Cool.
Yeah.
You got plans. You got thoughts. You got dreams.
Yeah.
It's good, man. I can hear it.
Yeah,
you've been working hard, man. It's good.
For sure.
It rolls off so naturally now because you've worked so hard these last several months to get it to a clearer place. Which I know Scott, first and foremost, probably in the internship, and I know we've talked too, just that necessity of getting clarity so that you can deliver what's this church going to be like, what's it founded upon quickly.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, maybe, Scott, why, not necessarily why now, but why would we say that as a local church, church planting needs to continue to be a main emphasis for us, right? Because we're going to, I mean, you just named Tom Caldy. We could go back and forth naming between probably 20 to 25 that we absolutely know. There's another 40 to 50 that are prayerfully considering. Yep. We're going to be losing some dear saints here, sending them out with our full blessing, but with tears. I mean, that's just going to be tough. Why?
The hardest part is what you just explained.
Why would we do that? Why go through that?
I know. Sometimes I'm like, why, Chris? I agree. No, but I think overall, there has to be something that rises above relationship as the end goal.
Yeah.
And partnership in the gospel, in the spreading of the gospel, is the end goal. And if you go after that, you will actually even sweeten relationships if you can keep it in that context of to say, if you feel called to this endeavor for the sake of the gospel, we will not lose that relationship. It will be sweetened because you will find yourself in trenches because of increased responsibility, perhaps, or proximity to the church that you will now have that will actually connect us more together because there is a sense in which we're sharing the weightiness of walking in ministry for the Lord Jesus Christ, as the gospel goes forth. So that to me is the calling that gets us over the edge of the tears. And it doesn't mean there aren't tears, And I think of even Paul, and it's just immediately coming to mind his tears with the elders at Ephesus.
Acts 20.
Yeah, in Miletus, right? Where he meets them there and he has this conversation with them and he kind of commissions them with some pretty strong words that you're going to have to be really careful. There's going to be people that come out from among yourselves that will look to deceive the people, and they just mourn that they may never see Paul again. Because why? Well, Paul loves these people, but for the sake of the gospel, he was en route to the next place that the Lord was leading him. And I think too often our Christianity can become way too personal, but it shouldn't lack personal. Should be a personal relationship, yes, but not only personal, and kind of familial only, and not this idea of going out and seeing it from you are a missionary wherever you are. Do you see yourself like that? And if so, it makes it easier to see, oh, wait, here's an opportunity to be a part of a church plant. And then I would just say we want to be open-handed as a church to not hoard our best resources, but to model the ministry pattern of the New Testament, which is to say the way to gain is to lose your best at times. It doesn't mean you do that foolishly. But here's the thing. It requires our church to continue to make disciples, to continue who's the next man up who can rise into that position that now Max has given way to, or Tom Caldy has given way to, or others, And so there's wisdom in how you do it for sure. You don't want to hive off one church to their weakness so that one can be strengthened, but where there is the ability to multiply and to continue to press into the church discipleship, that's how you go forward and can have multiplication take place while having strength internally take place, because you're constantly needing to work on the discipleship process.
Good.
All right, Max, I'm interested.
Okay.
I want to find out more. What can I do? How do I come to know where you're at, where meetings are happening? What can people do to get plugged in and maybe take a first step to consider this if they're in that place?
Yeah. 3 ways. 3 ways you can get a hold of me. I'll say that part. Okay. 3 ways you can get a hold of me. Number 1, we have the interest form. If you go to Doxa's website, there's a Folsom Church Plant page. There's a link that says, click here to fill out the interest form. You click that. You'll put in your name, email address, phone number, or whatever you're comfortable with, I suppose. And we'll be able to reach out to you that way. You can also email me directly, Pastor Max Monaghan. The day I found out I became a pastor, that became my email address. Just kidding. Pastor Max Monaghan at gmail.com.
It was before that.
I've had it since the
spell Monaghan,
grade.
though. So, Pastor and Max, how do we spell Monaghan?
Yeah, Monaghan. AGHAN.
All right, we'll probably get your last name in the title of this podcast. Anyway.
That'd be
okay. So they can
people.
they can podcast you. They can email you there. They can go on the app or the website. Doxa's app or website. Okay.
And you can also come find me if you're one of those people that is not afraid to approach. I would love to talk to you.
You do the pastor thing most Sundays. You're against the window.
You're with me a lot of times.
Yeah, you're with Scott a lot.
I've been trying to help Scott field questions
for a long time.
Yeah. And so I just, that's a habit to my own detriment at times. Lunch gets cold. My wife is ready to go. But now it's a ministry. So come find me. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to hear your story and get to know you and get you signed up.
Now, what's in store for the next several months? Just broadly, I know it's going to take shape as it does. But what are you expecting from here to the end of the year? What's your focus?
Yeah.
What are you doing with the group that is growing, that is interested?
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot of stuff going on. The doctrinal statement should be out soon. I'm not sure if we've got the giving updated, but at least soon on the Doxa page.
Yes, it's en route. Yeah.
Okay. You'll be able to click on your tithing, your normal tithing. You'll be able to divert that to the Folsom Church plant if you're.
And let me just say a word real quick. If you're a person who does know you are going to be joining the Folsom Church plant, hear it from us, between Scott and I, on behalf of elders, and they all know about this. We encourage, as soon as that is available, we want you giving to this new church.
Yeah.
We're going to be holding those funds for now until the church name and then a bank account can happen and all of that. But just we are excited to see that transition begin happening, and that financial commitment is among the first commitments that you can. I was going to say that you could bank on. No pun intended. But that you can,
until he gets a bank account.
But that you will know. Okay, this is a level of commitment.
Coin it.
Oh gosh,
we just went right over that one.
3 pastors get in a room and just got diverted.
And they all started with B's.
Yes, but they have an opportunity to show commitment in that way, and you can do that very soon. So, anyways, sorry about that. But the drop down, I can confirm, is happening very, very soon. The ability to give. Okay.
So there's that. Doctrinal statement should be out soon. We are about to dive into the small group playbook, if you will, the curriculum, if you will, and then we'll be training up small group leaders shortly after that. For the core group, if you have signed up and you want to be a part of the core group, which is essentially
what is the core group?
The core group
You're about to give it.
Yeah, it's the church before the church opens up.
Right.
We're looking for from our core group members that you'll attend the meetings, that you'll be inviting people, that you'll be giving, that you'll have transferred your giving over to this church. And then that you'll be praying for us, but also that you'll be serving. As we move forward into the core group stage, we're going to be
all hands on deck, right?
All hands on deck,
yeah.
And we're going to be figuring out places to put people and little departments that you can work within, whether that's kidsmen or I don't mean to call them little departments. They're so
all
essential
important
to the church.
Sure.
I just mean, small sections of the church, but, kidsmen and assimilation and so forth. So serving, and that's one of our pillars. So we're going to get started right away.
Yeah.
And those are going to start in October, first meeting in October, and then 2 in November and December. And
2 core group meetings?
Yes, core group meetings. And those will be Sunday evenings at a location that we are also working on right now. Just got some information on some that have been looked at. And then starting in January, it's going to be every single week we'll do a core group meeting every Sunday night. So
sweet,
off to the races.
Yeah, man.
And one of the things, too, we were talking about, just from a big picture perspective, to kind of know the emphasis over time, is to say that the first season is really about getting the word out and seeing those who are committed bringing their friends and maybe into their own homes, and there's vision meetings taking place. And that's definitely always a push, and you never want to lose that push.
Right.
You want it throughout, right? But then there becomes a transition where you go from, okay, now we've kind of got a core group established. They're saying, not only am am I coming, but I'm in to help this church get planted. And that's when the work and the teams gets taken care of. And then it's in that last little window before the launch, which is going to be somewhere around Easter, where launch team mode goes into effect, right? And you start to really establish what is the weekly rhythm going to look like for the church? How is that first service going to go? Who's going to be responsible for what? Because, of course, the idea is you want to train up believers to be in places so that when God brings people in, anything from other Christians, but hopefully also non-Christians, you're not the only person that can minister to them, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think a critical component to that is, well, it's twofold. It's the core group, and it's the small groups. That we can have, Lord willing, an army of people all on the same page, so that when the doors open and the neighborhood comes in and everyone, we'll all be on the same page.
Trained up and ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, man, it's a joy to be able to do this, sit down with you, hear how things are going, just for people to get a sense of where you have come from, the work that this is. That was only a small introduction, ultimately, to the work that it is. And so I would encourage you, if you're listening to this, watching this, that you would be praying for Pastor Max, that you would be praying for the core group team. There are, like we said, dear, dear people to us that are getting ready to make this transition, and that's very, very important. There will be tears, but we will be celebrating at the same time God's grace to not only call you, and part of that confirmation is to see what kind of high caliber people are coming around you who see it in you also, who see God's call into your life. I know that's humbling, because these are saints that are further along the line of sanctification and decades into following the Lord Jesus. And here that's you humbling. Are 33, am I right? Years old, and they are getting on board. And so we just want to say, if you're on the fence, not in a negative way, but you've just been thinking about it but haven't quite made yourself known to Max, make yourself known to Max ASAP. Get on the app, get on the website, find, go ahead and email him and jump in. At least take it seriously enough if you're in the Folsom and thereabouts area. At least make it a point to get to a meeting or two. None of those are so committal that you are, are obligated, but they definitely are worth your prayerful attention. Because that's how, of course, this thing is going to get going as more and more people jump in, get going, roll their sleeves up, find a position to serve in, and all just charge the hill for the glory of God.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would just say, for anybody who is on the fence or who's, kind of looking on from the outside, I would just say, take the next couple of months and try it out and get to know us and see if the Lord is calling you in this direction, and then, come the turn of the year, let's just go for it. Let's all be on the same page and committed, and, working toward planting this church for the glory of God.
It's good. Amen. Now we're going to have to Rochambeau for who gets to go to the first service.
Yeah, exactly, right? Later. I don't want there to be a recording of this. I don't want anyone to know who wins that. The loser will forever say somebody else cheated. But, Max, love you, brother.
Yes.
And I love you. Love your wife. I love the people that you are seeing come alongside you in this. I'm so grateful, man. God is faithful. And it's a joy to see this be done, do it together. So we do it in his name. And thank you for listening. We look forward to seeing you next time.
You've been listening to Doxologic, a podcast by Doxa Church in Rockland, California. To learn more, visit doxachurch.net.